My name is Amy, and 7 years ago, I married Brian. I thought we shared the same dreams and goals. We moved into my beautiful apartment on the top floor of a tall building with an amazing view that always took my breath away. I worked as the head of the finance department at a trading company, and my career was really taking off. Brian's mom, Lauren, lived nearby and often visited us. From the start, she made it clear she didn't like my career-focused lifestyle. "A woman's place is at home," she'd say with a disapproving look. "You should be taking care of your husband, not running off to work every day." I tried to stay calm, smiling and nodding when Lauren went on about what a good wife should do. But inside, I was frustrated. I had told Brian from the beginning that I wanted to focus on my career before we had children, and he had agreed. But as time went on, I saw him slowly changing his mind, likely because of his mom's influence. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find Brian and Lauren sitting at our dining table, talking quietly. They stopped talking as soon as I walked in, and I felt uneasy. "Amy," Brian said, looking tense. "We need to talk." I dropped my bag and sat down, feeling nervous. Lauren spoke first. "Amy, dear, we're worried about you. All this work, it's not good for you. You're neglecting your home and your husband. When are you going to think about having kids?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Lauren, Brian, and I already talked about this. We agreed to focus on our careers first, then consider starting a family." Brian shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Amy, maybe it's time to reconsider. We're not getting any younger and Mom's right. The apartment's messy, and I'm tired of eating takeout every night." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Brian, are you serious? We talked about this. You know how much my job means to me? More important than your family's?" Lauren cut in sharply. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the floor. "My job is how I'm building a future for us, for our family." "I thought you understood that, Brian." I stormed off to our bedroom and locked the door behind me. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of my problems, and I had no idea how right I was. The next morning, I left for work before Brian woke up. In the elevator, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let anyone, not even Brian, stop me from reaching my goals. I had worked too hard to get here, and I wasn't about to give up now. I arrived at the office earlier than usual and stayed late into the night, determined to prove myself. My hard work didn't go unnoticed. A few hours later, my secretary buzzed in. "Mrs. Alexander, the president would like to see you in his office." My heart raced as I made my way to the top floor. Mr. Timothy, our company's president, was known for his sharp business skills and his way of surprising employees. "Amy, come in," he said when I knocked on his door. "Have a seat." I sat down on the edge of the leather chair, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "I've been watching your work closely," Mr. Timothy began, his face unreadable, "and I must say, I'm impressed." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thank you, sir." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We're expanding, Amy, merging with a large company from another city. It's a big move, and we need our best people on it." My pulse quickened. Was this leading to what I thought? "I'm planning to promote you," he continued, to head of a new department. "But I won't lie to you, Amy. It's going to be tough. You'll have to work harder than ever before. Are you up for it?" I thought about Brian and Lauren, about their expectations of me. Then I thought about all those late nights I'd spent working, the pride I felt when a project succeeded. "Absolutely, sir," I said firmly. "I'm in. I won't let you down." As I left Mr. Timothy's office, I felt like I was floating. This was what I had been working toward for years. I couldn't wait to tell Brian. Surely, when he saw how far I'd come, he would understand why my career mattered so much to me. On my way home, I stopped at our favorite restaurant and ordered all of Brian's favorite dishes. I picked up a bottle of champagne and a bouquet of roses. This was worth celebrating, and I wanted to make it special. I juggled the bags as I unlocked our apartment door. "Brian," I called out. "I'm home, and I've got a surprise," I said, finding Brian in the living room, sprawled on the couch with the TV blaring. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Brian, you won't believe what happened today," I said, my excitement overflowing. "I'm getting promoted. I'll be the head of a new department. Isn't that amazing?" Brian muted the TV and turned to me, but he didn't look happy. "So, you'll be working even more now, huh?" My smile faded a little. "Well, yes, but think about what this means for us. We can finally afford that big house we've talked about, take regular trips, set up our future." Brian stood up quickly. "Our future? What future, Amy? You're never home as it is. When was the last time we had dinner together? When did we even have a real conversation?" I looked at the bags of food I brought. "That's why I brought dinner. I thought we could celebrate." "Celebrate what?" he said, raising his voice. "Celebrate you choosing your job over our marriage? Celebrate how I married someone who cares more about work than having a family?" I felt tears filling my eyes. "I thought you'd be happy for me," I whispered. For a moment, his face softened, but then it hardened again. "I can't do this anymore, Amy. Something has to change." With that, he stormed off to his office, slamming the door behind him. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the things I bought to celebrate, feeling lonelier than ever. As I put the food away and poured myself a glass of champagne, I wondered, was this the price of success? And if it was, could I really pay it? A few days later, while leaving the office, I had an idea. I'd hire a housekeeper, someone to clean and cook. That would solve Brian's complaints about the mess and lack of home-cooked meals. Feeling hopeful, I made the arrangements. 5 weeks later, I came home to a spotless apartment filled with the smell of a home-cooked meal. I smiled, sure that Brian would be pleased. I heard the front door open and close. "Brian," I called out. "I'm home, and dinner's ready." He walked into the kitchen, looking around the clean space. "What's all this?" "I hired a housekeeper," I said proudly. "She cleans and cooks for us." I thought hiring a housekeeper would make things easier for both of us. But instead of the gratitude I expected, Brian's face darkened. "So, this is your solution? Hire someone else to do your job?" he asked. "That's not fair," I replied. "I'm trying to find a balance." "Balance?" Brian laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call this? Tell me, Amy, now that you've found a replacement for yourself in the kitchen, are you going to find a replacement for yourself in our bed too?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "How dare you?" I said quietly. "I've done nothing but try to make our life better, and this is how you react." Brian turned away. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the spotless kitchen, with the untouched dinner going cold on the table. Over the next few days, Brian and I barely spoke. I threw myself into work, focusing on the upcoming merger. Dealing with spreadsheets and financial reports was easier than dealing with the mess my personal life had become. Then, one rare Saturday when I didn't have to go into the office, I decided to make an effort. I spent the morning cooking Brian's favorite meals, set the table with our best dishes, and even wore the dress he bought me for our last anniversary. When Brian came home, I greeted him with a smile. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Just the two of us." Brian looked at me for a moment, then nodded silently. My heart leapt. Maybe this was the fresh start we needed. I was just about to serve the appetizer when the doorbell rang. Confused, I went to answer it. There, standing in the hallway, was Lauren. "Lauren?" I said, surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "Oh, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "Brian, darling, there you are." I watched helplessly as my carefully planned romantic dinner turned into a family gathering. Lauren took over the conversation, slipping in little comments about my housekeeping and my lack of maternal instincts. "You know," she said, pouring herself more wine, "in my day, a woman knew her place was in the home. We took pride in taking care of our husbands and raising our children." I stood up quickly. "I think it's time for dessert," I said, escaping to the kitchen. I leaned against the counter, trying to calm myself down, but I could still hear Lauren talking in the dining room. "Brian, darling, you need to talk some sense into her. A woman's duty is to her family first. Everything else comes second." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. This wasn't the life I had imagined. I had a successful career, a beautiful home, but I was starting to wonder, at what cost? As I listened to Lauren's endless talk about traditional family values, I began to wonder if I had made a huge mistake somewhere along the way. One evening, I came home later than usual, still thinking about the day's meetings. As I opened the door, I froze. Scattered across the living room floor were baby clothes, tiny onesies, miniature socks, and even a small pair of shoes. "Brian," I called out, my voice shaky. "What's all this?" He walked out of the bedroom with an odd look on his face. "Oh, Mom brought those over. She thought it might help you get in the mood." I picked up a tiny t-shirt, my hands trembling. In the mood for what, exactly? "For starting a family, of course," Brian said, like it was the most natural thing. "Amy, we're not getting any younger. It's time we seriously thought about having kids." That evening, I silently put away the baby clothes, my mind spinning. Was I being selfish? Was my ambition ruining my marriage? The next morning, I woke up to find more baby items placed around the apartment, a rattle on the coffee table, a baby book on my nightstand, a high chair in the kitchen. This had Lauren written all over it. I tried to ignore them, but new items seemed to appear every day, as if the apartment was slowly turning into a nursery, whether I wanted it or not. One night, I came home to find Lauren sitting on our couch, flipping through a parenting magazine. "Lauren," I said, unable to hide my irritation. "I didn't know you were coming over." She looked up with a sweet smile. "Oh, Amy dear, I hope you don't mind. Brian said I could wait here for him. He just went out to get some groceries." I nodded stiffly and went to the bedroom to change. When I came back, Lauren was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. "You know, Amy," she said, still looking out the window, "a view like this is wasted on just 4 people. Imagine how lovely it would be to have a child toddle up to this window, little hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with wonder." A headache started to form. "Lauren, I appreciate your concern, but Brian and I will decide when we're ready for children." She turned to face me, her eyes hard. "And when will that be, Amy?" "When you've worked yourself into an early grave. When it's too late." I opened my mouth to respond, but just then, Brian walked in, his arms full of grocery bags. He looked between us, sensing the tension. "Everything okay here?" he asked carefully. Lauren's tone changed instantly. "Oh, everything's fine, darling. I was just having a little chat with Amy about family planning." Brian's eyes lit up. "Really? That's great. I knew you'd come around, Amy," Brian said. I felt trapped, outnumbered. I need some air," I mumbled, grabbing my coat and rushing out of the apartment. A few weeks later, I came home exhausted after a long day. The sight that met me stopped me in my tracks. There was Lauren, wandering around our living room in fluffy pink pajamas. "What's going on here?" I demanded, my voice rising. Brian stepped out from the kitchen, looking defiant. "I've decided Mom is going to live with us. You're always at work, always away. I'm tired of being alone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You decided this without even talking to me? When are you ever here to talk about anything?" Brian snapped back. I looked at Lauren, who was watching us with a smug smile. "You can't stay here, Lauren. This is my home." Brian's face darkened. "If you're not happy with this arrangement, you can leave." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Excuse me? I bought this apartment before we were married. It's in my name. You can't kick me out of my own home." Lauren stood up, her face twisted with anger, and took a step toward me. "Now listen here, you ungrateful." I held up my hand. "Don't come any closer, Lauren. If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the police." Lauren collapsed onto the sofa, clutching her chest dramatically. "Oh, Brian, did you hear that? She threatened to call the police on me. Your own wife, threatening your mother. That horrible job of hers has made her heartless." Brian rushed to her side, shooting me a look full of anger. "How could you, Amy? To your own mother-in-law." I couldn't take it anymore. Without saying another word, I stormed off to the guest bedroom and locked the door. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with the absurdity of it all. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Mr. Timothy, my boss. "Amy, I need you on a plane today," he said. "We're ready to move forward with the merger, and I need you in Orlando ASAP." I packed my suitcase as fast as I could. As I headed for the door, Brian and Lauren stood there, their faces like stone. "I have to go on a business trip," I said, my voice cold. "It's for the merger. I'll be back soon." Brian's lip curled. "Don't bother coming back at all." The flight to Orlando was a blur. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. The merger negotiations were intense, taking all my focus. But in the quiet moments, I couldn't stop thinking about the mess I had left behind. When I was alone in my hotel room, the reality of my situation hit me hard. After a long week of tough meetings and sleepless nights, I finally returned home. Standing outside my apartment door, with my suitcases by my feet, I felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. All I wanted was to collapse into my own bed and escape from everything for a while. I put my key in the lock, but it wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again. Nothing. A cold wave of dread washed over me as I began to understand what must have happened. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. After a moment, the door opened, and there stood Brian and Lauren, both in casual clothes, looking at me with smug expressions. "Why doesn't my key work?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Brian let out a harsh laugh. "I changed the locks," he said, his eyes cold. "You can come in if you're ready to choose your family over your precious career." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" Brian reached into his pocket and pulled out some papers. With a dramatic motion, he held them out to me. "Divorce papers," he said. "It's time to choose, Amy, your career or your home. What's it going to be?" I looked at Brian, really looked at him, and in that moment, I realized something huge. I didn't love him anymore. The man I'd married was gone, replaced by this bitter, manipulative stranger. Lauren's shrill voice broke my thoughts. "Well, we're waiting. Make your choice." I took a deep breath, standing tall. "I choose my career," I said, my voice steady. "Because I don't have a family or a husband, not anymore." Brian's face twisted with anger, but he shoved a pen at me. Calmly, I signed the divorce papers right there in the hallway. As soon as I finished, Lauren grabbed my arm and roughly pushed me toward the elevator. "Good riddance," she spat, slamming the door behind me. I stood there, staring at the closed door of what used to be my home. A strange laugh bubbled up inside me, almost hysterical. I had just been thrown out of my own apartment, the one I bought with my own hard-earned money. Too tired to make a scene, I picked up my suitcases and went to a nearby hotel. A few hours later, I got a call from my friend Lily, a realtor I had worked with when I bought the apartment. "Amy, honey, how are you doing?" Lily asked, sounding concerned. "I've been better," I replied. I admitted. "Why do you ask, Lily?" Lily hesitated. "I've seen Brian's posts on social media. He's saying some pretty nasty things about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "He's calling you a heartless career woman who threw away your family for your job. He says he sacrificed everything for your relationship and that you just used him and then tossed him aside. He's even talking about suing you for alimony." People are really feeling sorry for him, Amy. I felt a surge of anger. "That's not what happened at all." "I didn't think so," Lily said. "Do you want to tell me your side?" I gave her a quick summary of what had happened over the past week. When I finished, Lily was silent for a moment. "Oh, Amy," she finally said, "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Listen, I'm going to set the record straight with our friends and colleagues. People need to know the truth." "Thanks, Lily," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "I really appreciate that." After I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions: anger at Brian's lies, gratitude for Lily's support, and a growing determination. Brian may have taken my home for now, but I wasn't going to let him ruin my reputation or my dignity. Just then, my phone buzzed, and I saw Mr. Timothy's name. My stomach dropped. I took a deep breath and answered. "Amy, we need to talk," Mr. Timothy said, sounding unusually serious. "I've seen some concerning things on social media." I closed my eyes, bracing myself. Sir, I can explain. No need to explain, Amy, he interrupted. I want to hear your side of the story. Relief washed over me. I took a deep breath and told him everything. The arguments, Lauren moving in, being locked out of my own apartment, and Brian's smear campaign online. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end. Then, to my surprise, Mr. Timothy chuckled. Amy, do you really think I'd believe that nonsense your ex is posting? He said. I know you. I've seen your dedication and work ethic. Don't let this shake your confidence. You have every right to defend yourself, and I want you to know that the company is behind you. Tears of relief filled my eyes. Thank you, sir. You don't know how much that means to me. A couple of days later, my phone pinged with a social media notification. Brian was doing a live broadcast from my apartment. Curious, I tapped on the video. There was Brian, grinning at the camera, with a film crew behind him. Hey, everyone, he said excitedly. Big news. We're about to start a major renovation on our apartment. The crew from will be here in 2 weeks to transform this place. I stared at the screen, and a plan started forming in my mind. Instead of feeling angry, I felt calm and determined. I picked up my phone and called Lily. It's Amy. I need a huge favor, I said as soon as she answered. I need you to sell my apartment fast, like within 2 weeks. Lily let out a low whistle. That's a tall order, Amy. What's the rush? I quickly explained Brian's renovation plans. I need new owners in there before the film crew arrives. But, Amy, how am I supposed to show the apartment? Brian changed the locks, remember? I sent her the latest photos I had of the place. These will have to do. I know it's not perfect. Lily cut me off with a laugh. Oh, honey, don't underestimate me. I have a couple who've been looking for a place just like this in the area. They trust my judgment. With these photos and the reputation of the building, I think I can make this happen. For weeks flew by in a rush of work and anticipation. Before I knew it, the day of the big renovation reveal had arrived. I sat in my hotel room, laptop open, watching the live stream with bated breath. The camera panned across my former apartment, now buzzing with an excited film crew and construction workers. Brian and Lauren stood in the center, smiling proudly. We're so excited to start this renovation, Brian was saying, his arm around Lauren. It's time for a fresh start, a new chapter in our lives. Just as the host was about to signal the start of demolition, there was a commotion off camera. The door burst open, and in walked a smartly dressed couple, followed by a familiar face, Lily. I'm sorry, but you can't renovate this apartment, the man said, holding up a stack of papers. It belongs to us now. The camera swung as confusion spread. Brian's face shifted from shock to anger. What are you talking about? This is my home. Lily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Actually, Brian, this apartment belonged to your ex-wife, Amy. She sold it to this lovely couple 4 weeks ago. Your signature on the renovation documents is a forgery. The show's host turned to Brian, looking furious. You forged documents? Do you realize how much trouble you've caused? Brian and Lauren's faces turned beet red as the host scolded them on live television. The scandal unfolded in real time, with millions watching as Brian's lies crumbled around him. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. It was finally over. With the money from selling the apartment, I made a bold choice. I bought a charming little house in the city where our company had just finished its merger. It felt symbolic, a fresh start in the place where my career was reaching new heights. To my surprise and delight, Mr. Timothy appointed me as the head of our newly acquired company. It was a big challenge, but one I was more than ready for. A few weeks later, I found myself face to face with Brian again, this time in a courtroom. He had the nerve to ask for half the money from the apartment sale, plus alimony. I watched with satisfaction as the judge denied his claims, citing his attempts to take my property and the forged documents. As we left the courthouse, Brian approached me, his earlier confidence now replaced with desperation. Amy, please, he begged. I'm sorry for everything. Can't we start over? Give our marriage another chance. I looked at him closely and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a deep sense of freedom. I gave a small, Final laugh. No, Brian, I said, shaking my head. We can't start over. But I can start fresh, and that's exactly what I'm doing. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. My career was thriving. I was leading a successful merger and respected by my peers and superiors. And I had a beautiful new home, one that was truly my own.